Molly had always been the kind of girl people gravitated toward. She was a bright spark in her modest neighborhood, known for her warm smile and a knack for solving even the trickiest of math problems. If someone's bike chain came loose or their dog went missing, Molly was the first to help, often sacrificing her own time to make others' lives a little easier. Her parents, hardworking and loving, instilled in her the values of kindness and humility. Their home was small but filled with laughter, mismatched furniture, and the aroma of her mother's famous apple pie. Yet, beneath her sunny disposition, Molly harbored a secret. She didn't dislike how she looked. She just wished she felt better about herself. Her thick glasses, unruly hair, and secondhand clothes made her feel invisible, not because others said so, but because she felt it. At 14, Molly had started to notice that confidence wasn't just about being smart or nice. It was about liking what you saw in the mirror and how it made you carry yourself. Molly decided it wasn't about pleasing anyone else. It wasn't about fitting in at school or getting compliments. It was about finding joy in her reflection, about matching her vibrant inner self with a look she felt proud of. With determination, Molly saved her allowance, babysat her neighbor's twins, and spent hours researching simple, achievable changes. She learned how to tame her curls into soft waves and found frames that suited her bright green eyes. She even altered some hand-me-down clothes to make them her own. The transformation wasn't drastic, but it was enough to ignite a spark within her. Each time Molly looked in the mirror, she didn't see a stranger. She saw herself, confident, happy, and true to who she always was. One evening, Molly sat at the kitchen table, her chin resting on her hands as she stared at the flickering candle her mother had lit. Dinner was finished, and her father had retreated to the living room to read the newspaper. It was just her and Mandy now, the sounds of the night filtering in through the cracked kitchen window. Molly hesitated before speaking, the words she had been holding in for weeks finally bubbling to the surface. "Mom," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "I don't feel pretty." Mandy, who was drying dishes, paused mid-motion. She turned to face her daughter, her brow furrowing in concern. "What do you mean, sweetheart? You're beautiful." "No, I'm not," Molly said, her frustration breaking through. "I'm plain. My face is plain, my hair's a mess, and my clothes—" She looked down at her faded sweater and sighed. "They make me feel like I don't even exist." Mandy set the dish towel down and pulled out the chair beside Molly. "Oh, Molly," she said softly, reaching out to tuck a stray curl behind her daughter's ear. "Do you know what I see when I look at you?" Molly shrugged, unwilling to meet her mother's gaze. "I see a girl with the most amazing green eyes I've ever known. A girl with a heart so big it barely fits in her chest. I see someone who's smart, kind, and brave enough to admit when she's feeling unsure of herself." Mandy's voice was warm, soothing, but Molly shook her head. "But none of that matters if I don't feel it." Molly said, tears pooling in her eyes. "I don't feel beautiful, Mom. I want to make changes, not for anyone else, just for me. I want to feel better when I look in the mirror." Mandy was quiet for a long moment, studying Molly's face. Finally, she reached out and took her daughter's hands in her own. "I understand," she said gently. "It's okay to want to make changes, Molly. We all deserve to feel good about ourselves. But there's one thing you have to promise me." "What's that?" Molly asked, her voice trembling. "That no matter what changes you make on the outside, they don't change the person you are inside. You are already someone extraordinary, and no hairstyle or outfit can replace that." Molly nodded, her chest tightening with a mix of relief and gratitude. "I promise, Mom." Over the next few weeks, Molly took her mother's advice to heart. Mandy supported her every step of the way, giving guidance when needed, but letting Molly take the lead. They spent Saturday afternoons experimenting with hairstyles, laughing as they tried to wrestle Molly's wild curls into a sleek braid or a cascade of soft waves. When Molly found a pair of trendy glasses at the thrift store that framed her eyes perfectly, Mandy helped her adjust the fit. And when Molly asked if she could learn to sew, Mandy dusted off the old sewing machine and showed her how to tailor her clothes. Each small change built on the last, and with every tweak, Molly began to carry herself differently. It wasn't about becoming someone else. It was about discovering who she had always wanted to be. Her reflection in the mirror no longer felt like a stranger. It felt like a friend. One evening, after Molly had spent hours stitching patches onto a denim jacket, she modeled her creation for Mandy. "What do you think?" she asked, spinning around in the kitchen. Mandy smiled, her eyes shimmering with pride. "I think you're glowing." Molly looked at her reflection in the hallway mirror and felt a warmth spread through her chest. She didn't just look different, she felt different. Not because of the changes she had made, but because she had done it for herself, on her terms. She turned to her mom and grinned. "Thanks, Mom, for everything." Mandy pulled her into a hug. "No thanks needed, sweetheart. Just keep being you. That's more than enough." Years went by quickly. Molly stepped onto her college campus for the first time. Her heart raced with excitement and nervous energy. It was a new chapter in her life, a chance to grow even more into the person she was becoming. Her modest dorm room, shared with a lively and outgoing roommate named Darren, quickly became a safe haven. Darren was everything Molly admired: confident, stylish, and full of life. She wore bold colors, experimented with makeup, and carried herself with an effortless ease. At first, Molly worried that she might feel out of place next to someone so put together, but Darren's warm and welcoming nature quickly dissolved her insecurities. They bonded over late-night snacks and shared dreams, and it wasn't long before Darren became one of Molly's closest friends. One evening, as they prepared for a campus mixer, Darren noticed Molly hesitating in front of the mirror. "What's on your mind?" she asked, tilting her head. Molly sighed. "I've been thinking about trying makeup, but I don't even know where to start." Darren's face lit up. "Oh girl, you've come to the right place." She rummaged through her makeup bag and pulled out a few basics: mascara, a neutral eyeshadow palette, and a peachy blush. "We'll keep it simple. Baby steps." Over the weeks, Darren became Molly's unofficial style coach. She taught her how to blend eyeshadow, pick flattering colors, and even experiment with lip gloss. Molly practiced until she felt comfortable, starting small and slowly adding her own touches. She also began to incorporate Darren's tips into her wardrobe, layering stylish scarves or accessorizing with a belt that highlighted her figure. Molly's confidence grew, but not in the way she had once thought it would. It wasn't the makeup or the clothes that changed her. It was that she was shaping her own identity. She didn't want to look like anyone else. She wanted to look like the best version of herself. By the time the semester ended, Molly had found a balance that felt uniquely her own. She'd transformed not just her appearance, but the way she carried herself. With Darren's friendship and her own determination, Molly realized that self-expression wasn't about perfection. It was about joy, growth, and embracing the person she'd always been inside. Molly sat by the window of her favorite coffee shop, the soft hum of indie music filling the cozy space. She had a steaming cup of Earl Grey tea in front of her and a well-worn romance novel in her hands. Outside, the world bustled with students hurrying to and from classes, but Molly was lost in the pages, her heart quietly cheering for the story's heroine to find her happy ending. The barista behind the counter caught her attention, but not in the usual way. He wasn't like the other guys on campus, those loud, party-obsessed types who had started noticing her ever since she'd updated her look. No, this guy was different. He had shaggy brown hair, a scruffy beard, and wore a tie-dye shirt paired with ripped jeans. A beaded necklace hung loosely around his neck, and his vibe screamed, "free spirit." But what really stood out was his confidence. He moved with an ease that made it clear he didn't care what anyone thought of him. Molly returned to her book, but her attention kept drifting back to the counter. Every so often, the barista glanced in her direction, a faint, knowing smile playing on his lips. Then he did something odd. He came over with a fresh cup of coffee and set it down on her table. "Here you go," he said casually. Molly looked up, confused. "Oh, thanks, but I'm drinking tea." He raised an eyebrow, his smile widening. "I know, just thought you might want to switch it up." And with that, he walked away, leaving Molly staring after him in bewilderment. This little game continued for weeks. Every time Molly visited the shop, he'd bring her coffee she didn't order, accompanied by a quip or a grin. Despite herself, she found it amusing and oddly charming. She started coming back more frequently, her curiosity about the quirky barista growing. One evening, as the shop was winding down and only a handful of customers remained, he finally approached her again. He leaned casually against the back of the chair opposite hers, his hands stuffed in his pockets. "So," he said, his voice as relaxed as his demeanor, "are you ever going to drink that coffee? Or do you just like the smell?" Molly chuckled, closing her book. "I think you're confused. I'm a tea person." He smirked. "I'm not confused, just persistent. I'm Liam, by the way." "Molly," she said, smiling despite herself. "Nice to meet you, Liam." "Likewise," he said, then hesitated as if weighing his next words. "So, Molly, would you let a persistent barista take you out sometime? No coffee, I promise." Molly blinked, caught off guard by his directness. But there was something disarming about him, something that made her want to say yes. He wasn't like the other guys who had tried to flirt with her. Liam was authentic. He didn't seem to care about appearances or fitting in, and that intrigued her. "All right," she said, feeling a small thrill at her own boldness. "But only if you agree not to bring me coffee." Liam laughed, a rich, genuine sound. "Deal." Their first date was anything but conventional. Instead of dinner or a movie, Liam took her to an outdoor art installation he'd heard about. They wandered through a maze of sculptures lit by twinkling fairy lights, talking about everything from their favorite books to the quirks of campus life. Liam was funny, thoughtful, and a little odd in the best way. Molly found herself relaxing in his company, letting go of the pressure to be perfect. Liam didn't care about her makeup or her clothes. He cared about her stories, her dreams, and the way she lit up when she talked about her favorite things. By the end of the night, Molly realized she wasn't just intrigued by Liam, she genuinely liked him. For the first time in a long time, she felt completely at ease, her guard down. As he walked her back to her dorm, Liam turned to her with a lopsided grin. "So, tea tomorrow? I promise not to mess it up this time." Molly laughed, her heart feeling lighter than it had in ages. Over the next few months, Molly and Liam's relationship blossomed. They spent countless hours together, exploring the quirky corners of the town, sharing playlists, and exchanging their favorite books. Liam's relaxed, free-spirited nature balanced Molly's thoughtful and organized approach to life, and their differences only brought them closer. For the first time in her life, Molly felt truly seen, not for her outward appearance, but for who she was inside. One quiet evening, Molly sat in her dorm room, her phone in hand. She had just finished a call with Liam, and as much as she enjoyed their conversation, a small nagging feeling lingered. She opened her contacts and called her mom. "Molly, it's so good to hear from you," Mandy said warmly. "How's school? And how's Liam?" Molly smiled. "School's great, and Liam's amazing. I really think you'd like him, Mom." "I'm sure I would," her mom replied. "You've always had a good sense about people. But I have to ask, does Liam know everything about you?" Molly frowned slightly, leaning back in her chair. "What do you mean?" "I mean, have you told him about how much you've changed, about the effort you put into finding your confidence and transforming your look?" Mandy's voice was gentle but firm. "It's a big part of your story, Molly. A part of who you are." Molly hesitated. "No, I haven't. It just never seemed important. Liam likes me for who I am now." "I believe that," Mandy said. "But part of loving someone is letting them see the whole picture, even the parts you think don't matter. Your transformation wasn't just about your looks. It was about you becoming the person you wanted to be. That's a story worth sharing." Molly was quiet for a moment, Mandy's words sinking in. Her mom was right. She had worked hard to grow into the confident, happy person she was now, and Liam deserved to know that part of her journey. "Thanks, Mom," Molly said softly. "I'll talk to him." "Good, that's great to hear," Mandy replied with a smile in her voice. "He sounds like a good one, Molly." Molly nodded, already thinking about how she would share her story with Liam, because if he cared about her as much as she thought, he'd understand. The weekend had finally arrived, and Molly was both excited and nervous. Liam had agreed to visit her parents' home, and while she knew he'd love her family, she couldn't shake the small knot of apprehension in her stomach. She had decided it was time to tell him the truth about her transformation, to share the story she'd been keeping to herself. The car ride to her hometown was filled with laughter and easy conversation, Liam drumming his fingers on the steering wheel to the beat of the playlist they'd made together. Molly stole glances at him, wondering how he'd react to her secret. Liam had always been understanding, but she couldn't help but feel a flicker of doubt. When they arrived, Mandy greeted them at the door with a warm smile, pulling Liam into a hug that caught him off guard but made him laugh. Molly's father gave him a firm handshake and invited them inside, where the familiar scent of Mandy's apple pie filled the air. The house, though small, radiated love and warmth, and Molly felt a surge of pride as she showed Liam around. Later that evening, after dinner, Molly led Liam to her childhood bedroom. The walls were still adorned with posters of her favorite childhood bands and faded photos of her with friends and family. Liam looked around with interest, taking in the pieces of Molly's past. "There's something I need to show you," Molly said, sitting on the edge of her bed. She reached for a worn photo album on her bookshelf and gestured for Liam to sit beside her. He gave her a curious look but complied. Molly opened the album, flipping through pages of old photos, pictures of her as a young girl with thick glasses, untamed curls, and simple clothes. She pointed to one photo of herself sitting on the front porch, a shy smile on her face. "This was me," Molly said, her voice quiet but steady, "before I decided to change my look." Liam studied the photos carefully, his brow furrowed. "Okay," he said slowly, clearly trying to understand. "And?" Molly blinked, taken aback by his nonchalant reaction. "And that's my secret. I didn't always look like this. I worked really hard to feel confident in my appearance. I used to feel invisible." Liam turned to her, his confusion evident. "Molly, I don't get it. Why is this a big deal? You were beautiful then, and you're beautiful now." Molly's heart skipped a beat. "You really think so?" "Of course I do," Liam said, his voice firm. "But it's not just about how you look. It's about how you carry yourself, how you treat people. And honestly, I don't see some huge difference in these photos. I see you. The same Molly who's kind, funny, and way smarter than me." Molly smiled, but she knew she had more to explain. "It's not just about looks, Liam. Back then, I didn't feel good about myself. I was confident in my kindness and my brains, but I didn't feel like I could express myself the way I wanted to. Changing my look wasn't about impressing anyone else. It was about feeling like I could step out into the world and own who I am." Liam nodded, his expression softening. "I get that," he said after a moment. "What I love is that you didn't let the new look change who you are inside. You're still the Molly who gives her all to others, who laughs at my dumb jokes, and who reads sappy romance novels in coffee shops." Molly laughed, a wave of relief washing over her. "Thanks, Liam. I guess I was just worried you might see me differently." Liam shook his head. "Not a chance. If anything, I admire you more. You saw something you wanted to change, and you did it for yourself. That's brave." Molly leaned her head against Liam's shoulder, feeling a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the fire crackling downstairs. "Thanks for understanding," she said softly. Liam kissed the top of her head. "Always, Molly." And in that moment, she knew she had nothing to fear. Her story, her transformation, and her heart were all safe with him. As the weekend unfolded, Liam and Molly grew even closer, their conversations deepening as they shared more about themselves. It was late on Saturday night when Liam decided to share something he'd been keeping to himself. They were sitting on the back porch, the night air cool and quiet, stars twinkling above them. Molly had a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, and Liam leaned back in his chair, looking unusually thoughtful. "Molly," he began, his voice softer than usual, "there's something I've been meaning to tell you." She turned to him, curiosity lighting her green eyes. "What is it?" He hesitated for a moment, then let out a small chuckle. "All right, here goes. You know how I dress, the whole hippie thing?" He gestured to his tie-dye shirt and beaded necklace with a self-deprecating grin. Molly nodded, smiling. "Yeah, it's kind of your trademark. It suits you." "Well," he said, rubbing the back of his neck, "it didn't start out that way. I actually started dressing like this about 2 years ago, to upset my dad." Molly raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Your dad?" "Yeah." "Yeah," Liam admitted. "He owns the coffee shop where we met, and a bunch of other locations, too. My dad's this super buttoned-up, business-first kind of guy. He's all about appearances and tradition. For a long time, he wanted me to follow in his footsteps to help run the family business. But that's not what I wanted for myself. I have my own dreams, and I didn't know how to tell him that." "So, you rebelled," Molly said, a smile tugging at her lips. "Exactly," Liam said, laughing. I started dressing like this, tie-dye, beads, the whole deal, just to get under his skin, and trust me, it worked, but over time, I don't know. I started to like it. It felt like me, not just a costume. Molly studied him for a moment, her expression softening. So what are your dreams, Liam? Liam's smile grew earnest. I want to travel, maybe open a small art studio someday. Something that's mine, you know? Molly reached out and took his hand. That's amazing, Liam. And you know what? I think the look suits you. Not because it's a rebellion, but because it's yours now. Liam squeezed her hand, a warmth in his eyes. Thanks, Molly. I guess we both found ways to own who we are. When the weekend with Molly's family came to an end, Molly and Liam returned to campus, both feeling closer than ever. On the drive back, Liam was unusually quiet, a small smile playing on his lips as if he was working up the courage to say something. Finally, as they pulled into the dorm parking lot, he turned to her. Molly, he began, I was thinking, would you let me take you on a real date? Something formal. Molly blinked in surprise. Formal? Like suits and dresses? Exactly, Liam said, grinning. No tie-dye, no beads, just a chance to show you the world I grew up in. What do you think? Molly hesitated for only a moment before nodding. Okay, let's do it. A few nights later, Liam knocked on Molly's door. When she opened it, she found herself momentarily speechless. Liam stood there, completely transformed. Gone were his usual hippie clothes. Instead, he wore a sharp navy suit, the jacket tailored perfectly to his frame, and his hair was neatly combed. He looked every bit the part of someone from the polished world he had mentioned. You clean up well, Molly teased, though her cheeks flushed. And you look stunning, Liam replied, taking in Molly's elegant black dress and the way her curls framed her face. He offered his arm with a playful bow. Shall we? Their evening began with dinner at an upscale restaurant Liam had frequented in his younger years. The room was filled with well-dressed patrons, waiters gliding between tables with practiced precision. Molly felt a little out of place at first, but Liam made her feel at ease, cracking jokes and guiding her through the menu like a seasoned pro. After dinner, he surprised her with tickets to a classical music concert. As the orchestra played, Molly found herself mesmerized, not just by the music, but by the glimpse into Liam's past. She realized that while this polished world wasn't entirely him anymore, it was still a part of who he was. As they walked back to the car under the glow of city streetlights, Molly turned to Liam. Thank you for tonight. It was amazing. I'm glad you liked it, Liam said, his voice soft. It's a part of my life I don't share with a lot of people, but I wanted to share it with you. The next day, Liam was back in his usual tie-dye and beads, lounging in the campus coffee shop with his guitar. When Molly walked in, he waved her over, his signature grin firmly in place. Back to normal, huh? Molly teased, sitting down across from him. Absolutely, Liam said, strumming a chord on his guitar. But hey, if you ever feel like dressing up again, just let me know. I'll suit up any time for you. Molly laughed, shaking her head. I think I like this version of you better. Good, Liam said, leaning back in his chair, because this is who I really am. But every now and then, it's fun to step into another world for a bit. It reminds me of how far I've come, and how much more I want to grow. Molly nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. She'd spent years finding her own confidence, learning how to embrace every part of herself. Now she saw that Liam was on a similar journey. They weren't perfect, but together they were learning to love not just each other, but also who they were becoming. As they sat there, sipping tea and talking about everything and nothing, Molly realized that she didn't need a fairy tale romance with grand gestures and sweeping changes. She just needed moments like these. Simple, honest, and full of laughter, with someone who truly saw her for who she was. And in Liam, she'd found exactly that. Molly followed Liam through the winding streets near campus, her curiosity piqued. The late afternoon sun cast a golden glow over the city, and she felt a flutter of excitement in her chest. Liam had always been full of surprises, and this invitation to meet his friends felt like yet another chapter unfolding between them. They stopped in front of an unassuming brick building, its exterior weathered and slightly graffiti-marked. Liam turned to Molly, his hand resting on the door handle, a playful grin on his face. Before we go in, he said, his tone suddenly serious but still tinged with warmth, there's something you should know. This is where I hang out when I'm not with you. It's a bit unconventional, but it's my space." Molly tilted her head, intrigued. "Now you've really got me curious." Liam chuckled and pushed the door open, revealing a narrow staircase that led up to the second floor. He gestured for Molly to follow, and as they climbed, the faint scent of paint and turpentine grew stronger. When Liam opened the door at the top, Molly stepped into a world she hadn't expected. The large, airy room was a kaleidoscope of creativity. Canvases of all sizes leaned against the walls, some bursting with bold, chaotic colors, others delicate and precise. A few sculptures rested on pedestals, their forms abstract yet somehow alive. The wooden floor was splattered with paint, and a few mismatched chairs and a worn couch sat haphazardly around a low table littered with brushes and sketchbooks. But what truly caught Molly's breath were the paintings of her. They weren't just ordinary portraits. They captured her essence in ways she couldn't quite describe. One painting showed her laughing, her curls wild and untamed, while another depicted her sitting in the coffee shop, her eyes focused on a book. There was even a small canvas with just her hands, delicate and graceful, holding a cup of tea. "Liam," she whispered, unable to tear her eyes away. "You painted these?" "Yeah," he said, scratching the back of his neck, suddenly looking sheepish. "I didn't want to freak you out or anything. You inspire me. I couldn't not paint you." Molly turned to him, her eyes wide. "These are incredible. I don't even know what to say." "Well," Liam said, his grin returning, "you could start by saying you're not mad." Molly laughed, shaking her head. "I'm not mad. I'm amazed. This is... wow, Liam. I had no idea." "That's kind of the point," Liam said, gesturing to the room. "Most people don't. I don't even use my real name when I sell these. My dad doesn't know, and I'd like to keep it that way for now." Molly's brows furrowed. "Your dad doesn't know about this? Why?" Liam leaned against a workbench, crossing his arms. "Because he wouldn't understand. To him, art is a hobby, not a career. He's all about stability, running the family business, and living up to this image of success. He'd see this as impractical. That's why I use a pseudonym when I sell my work." Molly nodded, processing his words. "And you've sold these? Like people have bought them?" "Yeah," Liam said, a hint of pride creeping into his voice. "I actually have a curator on the East Coast who's been displaying my work in a gallery. I've sold a decent number of pieces through them. It's not enough to live on full-time yet, but it's a start." Molly looked around the room again, her eyes lingering on the vibrant energy of the art. "Liam, this is amazing. You're amazing. You've been doing all of this, creating all of this, and no one even knows." "Well, now you do," he said, his tone light but his eyes earnest. "And it feels good to share it with someone who gets it." Molly smiled, her heart swelling with affection. "I do get it. And for what it's worth, I think your dad would be proud if he saw this. Maybe not right away, but eventually." Liam shrugged, his gaze drifting to one of the paintings. "Maybe. But I'm not ready for that conversation yet. Right now, this is mine, something I do for me." "Fair enough," Molly said, stepping closer to him. "But can I just say something?" "Of course," Liam said, his grin teasing. "When do you not?" She playfully nudged his arm before continuing. "What you're doing here, it's brave. You're not just creating art, you're carving out a piece of yourself, even if the world doesn't fully see it yet. That's inspiring." Liam's smile softened, and he reached out to take her hand. "Thanks, Molly. That means a lot coming from you." Just then, the door swung open, and a small group of people entered, carrying bags of snacks and art supplies. They greeted Liam with warm familiarity and curious glances at Molly. Liam introduced her to his friends, fellow artists and creative souls who frequented the studio. They welcomed her into their circle as though she had always belonged. The evening passed in a blur of laughter and stories, with Molly learning more about Liam's hidden world. His friends shared tales of late-night painting sessions, impromptu art shows, and the struggles of balancing passion with practicality. Molly found herself captivated, not just by their stories, but by how deeply Liam was woven into this vibrant tapestry of creativity. As the night wore on and the group began to wind down, Liam walked Molly back to campus. The cool night air was quiet, the streets nearly empty. "Thanks for coming tonight," Liam said as they reached her dorm. "It meant a lot to me to share that with you." "Thanks for trusting me with it," Molly replied. "I feel like I got to see a whole new side of you." Liam grinned. "And if you ever feel like picking up a brush, let me know. I'll save you some canvas." Molly laughed, leaning up to kiss his cheek. "I'll think about it." As she watched Liam walk away, Molly felt a sense of awe. She had always known Liam was different, free-spirited, confident, and unafraid to be himself. But now she saw the depth of his passion, his determination to follow his dreams despite the expectations placed on him. It was inspiring, and it made her feel even more certain that together they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The next day, Destin, Liam's father, called and asked to meet for dinner. Liam asked if he could bring someone with him. Destin asked who. Liam said her name is Molly. She is a student at the college. I will set an extra plate setting for her. Liam called Molly and asked her to have dinner with his father. Molly was taken back, but she also wanted to know more about Liam's family. Molly dressed in a nice formal but understated outfit for the evening. Liam's father, Destin, led them into a formal dining room with a long oak table set for 3. The table gleamed under a chandelier, the setting meticulous and almost intimidating. Molly felt a twinge of nervousness, but remembered Liam's words before they arrived. "Do not let my father intimidate you." She straightened her back and followed Liam's lead, sitting down beside him. Dinner was surprisingly pleasant, filled with light conversation. Destin asked polite but probing questions about Molly, her studies, her interests, her family. Molly answered confidently, her warmth and honesty earning a few small smiles from Destin. Liam, however, remained on edge, his fork clinking against his plate more often than necessary. He was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Once the plates were cleared and the last of the coffee was served, Destin leaned back in his chair and studied Liam carefully. His sharp gray eyes seemed to cut through the room, and his presence, while calm, commanded attention. "Well," Destin began, setting his coffee cup down with a soft clink, "I suppose it's time we talk." Liam glanced at Molly, then back at his father. "All right, Dad, what's this all about?" Destin's gaze shifted to Molly, his expression unreadable. "First, I want to say, Molly, you've made quite an impression. I've heard good things about you, and now that I've met you, I can see why." "Thank you, Mr. Hart," Molly replied, her voice steady. "Call me Destin," he said, a hint of a smile breaking through his stern demeanor. He turned back to Liam, his expression growing serious. "Now, to the matter at hand. Liam, I know about your artwork." Liam froze, his breath catching. "What?" "I know about the paintings, the gallery on the East Coast, the pseudonym, all of it," Destin said, his tone calm but firm. "And before you ask, no, I'm not angry." Liam blinked, caught completely off guard. "You're not?" "No," Destin replied, leaning forward slightly. "In fact, I'm impressed. You've built something entirely on your own, without my help or resources. That takes guts." Molly smiled softly, seeing the tension in Liam's shoulders ease slightly. But Destin wasn't finished. "However," Destin continued, "I need to know why you've kept this a secret. Why the pseudonym? Why not come to me about this?" Liam hesitated, his hands fidgeting with the edge of the tablecloth. Finally, he sighed and looked his father in the eye. "Because I didn't think you'd understand. Art isn't exactly what you've ever valued. You've always been about business, structure, tradition. I thought you'd see it as a waste of time." Destin nodded slowly, as if weighing Liam's words. "I can see why you might think that. I've been hard on you about taking over the coffee shop. But Liam, did you ever consider that I pushed so hard because I wanted you to have security? To know you had a foundation to fall back on?" "I get that," Liam said, his voice quiet but firm. "But I needed to prove to myself that I could make it on my own, doing what I love." Destin's eyes softened. "And you have. That's what I wanted to tell you. I've been following your career for months now through your curator. Your work is extraordinary, Liam, truly." Liam's jaw dropped. "You've been following my career? You knew the whole time?" Destin smiled slightly. "Yes, I didn't want to confront you about it until I saw where it was going. But now that I see how passionate and talented you are, I want to help." Liam leaned back, clearly overwhelmed. "Help? How?" "I can connect you with people who can give your work even more visibility. Galleries, investors, exhibitions. You've built something incredible on your own, but I think it's time for you to consider what more you could achieve with a little support." Liam looked at Molly, his expression a mix of shock and hesitation. "What do you think?" he asked her. Molly smiled, reaching for his hand. I think it's your decision, Liam, but I also think your dad believes in you. That says a lot. Liam turned back to Destin, his expression softening. All right, he said. I'm willing to hear you out, but only if I get to keep doing this my way. Destin nodded, a proud smile spreading across his face. That's all I could ever ask. The tension in the room lifted, replaced by an unexpected warmth. For the first time, Liam felt a sense of mutual understanding with his father. And as they left that evening, Molly couldn't help but feel that Liam was stepping into a brighter, bolder chapter of his life, one where he could finally bring all the pieces of himself together. As Liam and Molly prepared to leave Destin's house that evening, Destin stopped them in the hallway, his expression thoughtful. Before you go, he said, his tone shifting to something more serious. There's one more thing I'd like to discuss. It's about Molly. Molly and Liam exchanged a quick glance, surprise flickering in their eyes. Molly turned to Destin, curious but slightly nervous. What is it? Destin gestured toward the sitting room. Let's sit down for a moment. They followed him back into the room and sat on the plush couches, the air tinged with a mix of curiosity and anticipation. Destin leaned forward, resting his hands on his knees, and looked directly at Molly. I'll start by saying that I admire you, Molly, he began, his voice steady and sincere. Liam has spoken highly of you, but meeting you and learning your story has given me even more respect for the person you are. Molly blinked, caught off guard. Thank you, Destin. That means a lot. Destin nodded. Liam told me about your journey, how you transformed your appearance not for anyone else but for yourself. That's not an easy thing to do, especially when you're young and the world is so quick to judge. It takes strength, self-awareness, and a lot of courage. Molly felt her cheeks warm under his praise, but she remained silent, waiting for him to continue. That transformation, Destin said, is exactly why I wanted to speak with you. For some time, I've been thinking about starting a nonprofit organization, something aimed at giving young people the resources and support they need to express who they truly are, without fear of judgment or rejection. Liam raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. That's not what I'd expect from you, Dad. Destin smiled faintly. You'd be surprised, Liam. I've spent a lot of time reflecting on my own values and how rigid I've been in the past. I've realized how much young people, especially those like you and Molly, benefit from spaces where they can be themselves without conforming to someone else's expectations. He turned back to Molly. And that's where you come in. I want you to be the spokesperson for this organization, your story, your strength. It's exactly the kind of inspiration I want to share with others. Molly's eyes widened, her breath catching. Me? A spokesperson? Yes, Destin said firmly. You embody what this organization will stand for, self-expression, resilience, and the importance of embracing one's true identity. You've walked this path, and I believe your voice could make a real difference. Molly looked at Liam, who was grinning, his pride evident. Then she turned back to Destin, her mind racing. She had never seen herself as a public figure, let alone someone who could inspire others on such a scale. But the idea of helping young people, of being part of something so meaningful, filled her with a sense of purpose she hadn't expected. I'm honored, she said finally, her voice steady but soft. Really? I am, but are you sure I'm the right person for this? Destin smiled, his gaze unwavering. I have no doubt. You've already inspired Liam, and I can see how much you've grown into the person you've always wanted to be. That's the kind of story people need to hear. And if you agree, we'll provide you with all the tools and support you need to succeed. Molly took a deep breath, her heart pounding. She thought about all the nights she'd spent doubting herself, all the effort it had taken to build her confidence, and the way Liam had encouraged her to embrace every part of her journey. This wasn't just an opportunity, it was a way to give back, to help others like her find their own paths. I'll do it, she said finally, her voice clear and resolute. I'd love to be a part of this. Destin's face lit up with approval. That's wonderful to hear. I'll start putting things into motion, and we can discuss the details in the coming weeks. Liam leaned over and squeezed Molly's hand. I'm so proud of you, he said softly. You're going to be amazing. Molly smiled, her nerves giving way to excitement. She couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude, not just to Destin for the opportunity, but to Liam for always believing in her, and to herself for daring to grow and change. As they left Destin's house that night, Molly felt a new sense of purpose blooming inside her. She was stepping into a role she never imagined for herself, but one that felt right. She had spent so much of her life learning to embrace her true self, and now she had the chance to help others do the same. For the first time, she felt like her journey wasn't just about her. It was about everyone who needed to know that they could express themselves, find their confidence, and thrive, no matter what the world might say. And with Liam by her side and Destin's support, she knew they were only just beginning. Hope you enjoy our heartfelt tale by Green Tea Tales. Help support our channel by like and subscribe. Thank you.